The SEC absolutely smoked the ACC on Tuesday night, but the chef was cooking for Clemson to stave off a shutout.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, joined today by our good buddy, Leif Thulin. You're joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Thanks so much for making us your first listen or watch. And reminder, you can catch every episode ad-free on our Amazon Music. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us, and of course all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. Man, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers place a $5 bet, and if it wins, you're going to get $150 back in bonus bets. Check it all out at FanDuel.com to get started. Leif, the undefeated watch. I haven't updated us much on that on the show, but we're down to 14 remaining undefeated teams in the nation in Division I. 8 of them are in action tonight, and so we'll probably see a couple more fall from that. There is an absolutely loaded slate of games tonight, Leif. More ACC, SEC, 6 of those games, more Big 12, Big East, 3 more Big 10 conference games. Amongst that, we get 4 ranked matchups, 2 of which are top 10 battles. I am geeked, I'm amped, I'm giddy, whatever phrase you want to say, I'm in for it. And then we got to talk about last night's stuff. That's where we're going to start. SEC got off to a hot start. Big East home teams won last night in the Big East Big 12 battle, and some exciting Big 10 action, including a buzzer beater. Love a good buzzer beater, especially when it's a do or die, as last night's was. So, Leif, let's start with the ACC SEC, where we had 10 of the 16 games last night. I don't know why it's not evenly divided, but there you go. SEC goes 9-1 in these games, with Clemson over Kentucky being the lone ACC win to stave off that shutout. Leif, I want to talk about these games, but first I want to zoom out and look big picture, and I want you to choose from one of these 3 things or a combo platter. It's like when you have to choose beef or chicken or shrimp at the Mexican restaurant, or they can let you go combo. So you choose. Is this an indictment of the ACC? Is this a confirmation of the SEC being superior this year? Or is it just simply a matter of the way the matchups came together and the SEC was favored in 9 of the 10 matchups on Tuesday night? What is your assessment of this situation?
I would go with a confirmation of how good the SEC is the most. I think you could make an argument for the other 2 as well.
Sure.
But, I mean, you just said it. They were favored in 9 of the 10. And frankly, the one that they weren't favored in, Louisville, they lost one of their best players in Maui, or excuse me, in the battle for Atlantis. So I mean, I thought Ole Miss was going to win that game. I think Ole Miss is a better team than Louisville, but it was at the Yum Center. So that's probably where they got those points. So I think the SEC right now will have, it probably won't have, but I think right now there'd be 10 or 12 teams, like somewhere between 10 to 12. And I think they'll end with 10. I don't think you can probably get 12, but
just by the logistics of it and beating each other. Yeah.
There's a world in which 12 is possible only because the Pac-12 is no longer going in the same way that there's so many bids. So last year there's 5 Pac-12 bids that gets separated into different conferences. The SEC is going to be the greatest beneficiary. So I think there's going to be double-digit SEC teams. So I have to say it's the strength, and teams that I have underperformed so far in the SEC, I think will get better. Like Texas A&M has not been great. I think they're going to get better. I think you look at a few teams like Mississippi State, they've got a big test against Pitt. I actually think Pitt's going to push them, but at the same time, they're still a 6-point favorite. So that speaks to the strength of the SEC when a middling team in the SEC is a 6-point favorite over a top 3 or 4 team in the ACC.
Yeah, I like that. And Leif, I was looking, as you were talking there, I was looking at Ken Palm's conference rankings. Have you checked it out lately?
No, I haven't looked at the conference.
Good, because I want to quiz you. Who do you think is number 1 right now?
I mean, I'm going to guess SEC, but the Big 12 certainly has got a claim.
Okay, here's what's interesting. And obviously, this is Ken Palm's algorithm. Big 12 is third right now, just slightly behind the Big 10 at plus 16.64 for Big 12, 16.74 for the Big 10. But catch this, the SEC right now is plus 19.54 as a conference. The last time I looked back, the last time a conference finished a season, and obviously we're pretty early on, but the last time a conference finished a season plus 19 or greater was back in the 2016-17 season, Leaf. So SEC is looking very, very strong right now. I would be the same as you. I would say this is a confirmation of the SEC's dominance this year with slight combos of matchups and ACC indictment mixed in. So I just wanted to start there, Leaf, but we got to get to these games because there were so many fun ones. There were comebacks. Miami playing better than they have been. Arkansas coming back from down, took a first lead with 1:45 left in the game. And then Boogie Fland kind of takes over. But Leaf, I think we got to start with the one game. Unfortunately for the SEC, I think the premier game that we want to talk about is Clemson winning at home against number 4 Kentucky, giving Big Blue Nation their first loss of the season, 70-66. And Leaf, the chef, was absolutely cooking in this thing. 20 rebounds, a career high for Ian Schefflin. Great stuff. What did you like in this game?
I think my biggest takeaway is Kentucky doesn't wow me. Like that number 4 next to their name is not necessarily indicative of what they are. I think they had a good schedule and they had a marquee win in a marquee event in the Champions Classic, beating Duke. If I said this right after the show, so for those of you who listen, the everydayers, we appreciate you. But if you want to check the notes, my reaction was, I don't think that they should have won. I think Duke was the better team, and I'm going to rank them accordingly. Duke lost common knowledge, had some turnovers. I still think Duke's the better team. But that's not saying Kentucky's bad. But then I watch them in this game. I think they're a little predictable. Like they have multiple different scores, but the actions are all similar. And so when you're able to make it a physical game and not as finesse oriented, make Kobe Brea run off the 3-point line, Jackson Robinson off the 3-point line. I've never been a Kirk Kriisa believer. I think Kentucky's a top 20 team in the country, but they're not a top 5 team. And the truth is they're somewhere between 5 and 20. And I think they're closer to 20 than 5.
And that's where we were, I'm looking at our Locked On College Basketball top 25 right now, which you and Andy and I all vote in. And we had Kentucky 8th. And I think that is more, and that's not all that far from 4th, right? Like, let's recognize that. But I think that's more appropriate for where they should be right now. Do you think we got that right for right now for Kentucky?
Yeah. And I think you have to factor in record because, like, Duke has 2 losses. Alabama has a couple losses. And so maybe you play the Oregons and Kentuckys who have beaten each of those teams. But in reality, I try to balance the grand scheme of things, like who I think is actually going to be very good down the road and what's transpired in the moment. And I think Kentucky, for the AP poll and a little bit for us, we were captured by perfect record and 1 marquee win. Yeah. But I don't think they're all that great. But Clemson, I think it's the top 5 team in the ACC, and they solidified that with a big-time win against Kentucky. Schefflin's awesome. I'm actually very eager to see what centers in the ACC get honoree mentions, because my personal favorite, Maxime Reynaud, awesome. Schefflin, pretty darn good. You look at a top 10 draft pick in Malach, and then you have a lot of other guys that have a lot to say on it too, on some of the teams that we don't talk about as often. So I think Clemson's top 5. I think Pitt's top 5. I actually think Pitt might be number 2. I think Duke's clearly the best team. I think Carolina, Pitt, and Clemson are 2 through 4.
2, 3, and 4 in some order.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. And why Schefflin is so endearing is because he's like this undersized kid that just outplays people, out hustles people, works his butt off. And I think that's what we want to see. That's what makes college basketball so special. Not like we love the diaper dandies and their talent and all that, but it's these dudes that hang around for a while and just have the dog fight in them and just get after it. And that's what makes me love the chef so much. Also, maybe it's because I loved watching the Bear. And so I'm all in on chefs, but I think that's a good thing. And Leif, I don't want to pat us too much on the back, but we have Clemson ranked this week, 25th in our top 25 poll. And I think that's probably just about right of where to have them there. And I'm with you on Kentucky. 2 things. I loved your takes on, Andy and I were texting about this some on Tuesday night, is it seems like Kentucky might struggle this year with physical front court players. They're going to have to figure out how to be more solid. And also, Clemson was committed to running Kentucky off the line. Obviously, Kentucky wants to get out and shoot. We've seen that from Mark Pope teams, obviously at BYU and now in Lexington as well. Not only did Kentucky not shoot well, 25.9% from three, but they only got 27 attempts. They're wanting to get more into those mid to upper 30s with their 3-point attempts. So I think that's well assessed. Leif, there were 9 other games. Very quickly, any others that stood out to you? We had Tennessee just like curb stomping Syracuse last night. They're killing opponents, have won every game by at least 15 points so far this year. Texas A&M, I was a little concerned about them. They were able to pull away from Wake late. You mentioned earlier that, or maybe it was when we were talking pre-show, but Ole Miss goes to Louisville, who's now without Case and Pryor, done for the year ACL, which was the only game the ACC was favored in. Ole Miss wins this game 86-63. Leif, what stands out to you from these other games?
I think Ole Miss is pretty good. Like I think Louisville is a big brand that's they're revitalizing their program, and that's wonderful. But that's not a immediate process. I don't know if Louisville's a tournament team yet. I think they're going to be kind of a bubbles team, and I think Ole Miss is probably a top 7 seed. And they're probably the 7th or 8th best team in the SEC. So this is largely just speaking to the strength of the SEC, but that's a team with a lot of talent. They're going to get better as the season goes along, as they coalesce, because there's a lot of transfers. And Chris Beard, say what you want, probably a despicable human being, but a very good basketball coach. And I think they're pretty good. And I think that actually helps Purdue a lot, because Purdue beat them. Even though Purdue is up 17 at one point in that game, they showed the mettle and were able to figure their way to win. And I think that's going to look like a good win down the road for Purdue.
Well, obviously, as we said, there were tons of those games. We got 6 more ACC, SEC games tonight. We'll preview those in a little bit, but we also kicked off the Big 12, Big East battle on Tuesday night, and Villanova wins. How about that? Plus, the Big 10 kicked off conference play with 3 games of their own. We're going to get to all that and more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Bettor Together. Do you hate the team you drafted in season-long fantasy this year? Leif, I don't. My team is killing it right now. I've clinched first place. How do you play fantasy football?
Oh yeah, I'm in 3rd right now, but I'm 8-3 in my last 3 weeks. I had injuries the first 2 weeks.
Okay, so you're
I'm
coming along.
Up.
I love it. Well, maybe you're like Leif. You're trying to punch up to first place, or your team's just awful, but you want to stay in the action. Well, Bettor Together, let me introduce you to that, because it's the first cooperative daily fantasy platform. Teamwork triumphs talent here, and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner or your friends to boost your odds and climb the leaderboard together. Grab a friend, join this daily social fantasy movement at Bettor Together. It's a great way to enhance the social experience of watching sports, because sure, DFS is fun, but like so many other things in life, it really is so much better when you get to do it with friends. So download Bettor Together right now from the App Store. Sign up using promo code LOCKEDON for a chance to play in a contest with some of us, because winning alone is fun, but I tell you what, it's better together. Leif, let's get to the Big 12 Big East battle, which is also going on. It's a little more spread out. ACC, SEC is confined to Tuesday and Wednesday. This series is going to be running through, I think it's like Saturday or Sunday. We had 2 games on Tuesday night. In one of them, Villanova wins against number 14 Cincinnati. Wes Miller's first loss of the season. Big win for Villanova, 68-60. In the other game, BYU goes on the road to Providence, and Providence, the Friars, win this game 83-64. So let's start with these. Leif, for Kyle Neptune, this is a massive win. It's tied for his 2nd highest win over an AP ranked team in his 3 years so far at Villanova. They beat North Carolina, who was also 14th last year in the battle for Atlantis, and their biggest win was they won at Creighton, who was 12th at the time last year in overtime. Leif, is this just a flash in the pan? Like, Villanova is now 5-12 against AP ranked teams in the Kyle Neptune era. Is it enough to cool off that hot seat a little bit, or just like, yeah, okay, fine?
I don't think it cools off the hot seat, because they've lost all those Big 5 games in the city of Philadelphia. They've lost to other bad teams. They were bottom dwellers in the Big East. But the Big East made themselves a lot of money yesterday. And what I mean by that is people complained about Big East only getting 3 teams in last year, and it stunts the growth of the league and how much funding they get for basketball because they only had UConn, Creighton, and Marquette, and that was 3 teams that made the Sweet 16. So therefore, the league was great, and you can spin it however you want. Well, they moved up a ton because they won home games. Providence dismantled BYU. BYU is going to be a tournament team. You saw Nova beat a tournament team in Cincinnati. I do want to say that I think Cincinnati's a bit overrated because they're analytics darlings and have played no one. But I thought they'd beat Villanova, and I was wrong. So I think Villanova has a slim chance to progress and make the tournament. They've gotten better because they should have beaten Maryland as well. And so you look at the way that they're growing, that's great. But Kyle Neptune's seat is burning hot, and I think he's got the hottest seat in the country. And in time, I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Woodson's seat gets pretty warm as well.
Yeah, they won last night, but it was against Sam Houston State, so you got to win that game in Assembly Hall. Yeah, very interesting stuff here. Of course, Eric Dixon, man, he's just out here doing Eric Dixon things. 31 points in this game. Great to see from him. Also good to see Wooga Poplar get a double-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds for him. You said you're a little low on Cincinnati, Leif. Where if you were re-ranking them, where would you kind of have them now? Or is this like, hey, sometimes you lose a road game? What's up with that?
I just don't think they've played anyone. So when they're ranked where they're ranked, it's basically because they're beating people by a significant margin. Like we saw UConn doing that up until Maui. Like they were beating everyone by 35 plus, and all of a sudden they went 0-3.
Because it was teams ranked outside the top 200. They were all in the 300s. Yeah.
And Cincinnati, to a slightly lesser degree, had followed that same formula. They go on the road and they play a team that I don't think is very good in Villanova and get beaten. I wouldn't say badly, but handily.
Yep.
So you go to the Big 12, and I think Cincinnati is a team that people become infatuated with because they play this, hey, I'm really athletic, I'm going to get in your face, defend, and we're going to overwhelm you. I just don't think it works in the same way. Yes, defense is very important in the Big 12, but I don't think you're going to be able to overwhelm teams athletically in the Big 12 like they had at this point in the season. I don't think Cincinnati is a bad team. I just don't think they're the borderline top 10 team that I've been seeing in polls.
Yeah. Cincinnati made a nice push in the second half to get it down to 1, but then Villanova accepted that punch back, and just kind of held on down the stretch. Leif, let's turn our attention to the Big Ten. And we've got a couple of interesting results here where Michigan goes to Wisconsin, previously unbeaten Wisconsin, and wins 67-64. I think we've both kind of been some believers in Michigan. Let's start there, because one of the big questions for me coming into the season is, will Dusty May start Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf together? He has been. It felt like it's taken a little bit to gel, but man, it's working so well right now. They combine for 44 points on 16 of 27 shooting, 10 of 13 from the free throw line, 12 boards, 6 assists, 4 steals, and Leif 8 blocks between Vlad and Danny Wolf combined. Are we starting to see this front court really settle in and able to play 2 7-footers all the time? Or a lot of the time.
They were awesome yesterday. And Vlad Golden was the recipient of Danny Wolf alley-oops time and time again. It was a 4 with the ball, the 5 setting the screen, pick and roll. You don't see that in college basketball very often. You don't even see that very often in the NBA. And Vlad Golden dunked the ball in. His points were easy because of Danny Wolf's ability to move so swiftly. He's become a better athlete than he was at Yale and has really made himself into a better basketball player. I think he might be an all Big Ten guy, and I was actually pretty skeptical of Danny Wolf's transition. So I thought Wisconsin was going to win that game at home because Wisconsin's pretty good. They find a way to score, but the key to that game was Wisconsin's best scoring this season has become at the free throw line. They shoot 85% early in the season. They're shooting a great percentage from the free throw line, and they get there all the time. So you get to the free throw line, you score a lot of points. Well, Wisconsin kept going to the rim trying to draw fouls, and they were getting their shots eradicated left and right by Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf. And that caused some issues. And at the end of the game, Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden ran pick and roll, and Stephen Crowell fouled out, and it was ball game. Michigan was the deserving winner of that game at Wisconsin. So, and people had Wisconsin number 11 at the poll. And I think they had a good reason to. They beat Pitt. They played well, beat Arizona. Granted, Arizona's not very good, but I mean, that's a really impressive win to start Big Ten play. I think Big Ten might run through Michigan and Oregon based on the early progressings of this so far.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting to see. Purdue's certainly going to have a voice in that. TKR is playing really well right now. It's fun to see. We have Wisconsin 15th in our poll right now, and we had Michigan in others receiving votes. If they keep doing this, just one loss on the season so far for Michigan, they might move right on into that top 25. Elsewhere in Iowa City, Northwestern comes in thinking they're going to steal a road win to kick off Big Ten play. But Josh Dix has other ideas, Leif. A buzzer-beating do-or-die three. We love these. In fact, it's our second one of this variety in recent days, where it's like you're down two. You don't. The shot is not for the tie, and it's either. It's not like you're playing for overtime. You're playing for the win, and if you make this shot, you win. If you miss this shot, you lose and go home or stay home, I guess, in this case. I love it. Iowa wins at home 80-79 on this Josh Dix buzzer beater for Northwestern. Man, they had just suffered a tough defeat at home to Butler. That Barnhizer had that kind of banked in three when Butler was trying to foul that was waved off. And so Northwestern, man, a couple tough losses here, Leif.
Yeah, and that team was up on Dayton at Dayton earlier in the year too. So a lot of close games against quality opponents. Northwestern has a up and coming star in the Big Ten, and Nick Martinelli has been perhaps the biggest surprise in the Big Ten. And I'm curious to see how they do, because that was a team picked 15th, and if that's 15th, then the league's pretty good. But I don't think they have the top end firepower that they've had in years past as a league.
We miss Boo Booey, Leif. We miss our guy Boo Booey. But yeah, Nick Martinelli had 19, Ty Berry 20, and Barnhizer had 21. So they got three dudes dropping 20, but just not able to pull it out on the road there in Carver Hawkeye. Unfortunate for them. And then we had our first West Coast Big Ten Conference game where Washington goes to UCLA and the Bruins win 69-58. Just kind of held off the Huskies at about that 10-point gap throughout most of the second half. An 11-0 run over like just shy of 2 minutes at one point in the second half, kind of put it there, and then it went away. So Leif, we got to get to tonight's action because there's absolutely so much. We've got 4 ranked matchups, including 2 top 10 matchups. In the ACC, one there in ACC, SEC, one in Big 12, Big East. I am so giddy. We get 3 more Big 10 battles, all of that coming up tonight, and we'll hit that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers, you can bet $5, and if you win, you're going to get $150 back in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. It's all in one place. So like maybe you get a hunch, it's the middle of the game. You can go check out live play-by-play, the latest stats, so much more, literally on the same page where you place your bets. Those 4 ranked matchups tonight. UNC is favored -1.5 over Alabama at home. Duke -2.5 over Auburn at home. Big 12, Big East action, Iowa State -5.5 over Marquette, and UConn -2.5 over Baylor, despite no Alex Caravan tonight. You know we're about to talk about that. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started again with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and go make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Ooh, Leif. A crazy night. I wish it was a little more spread out, but we'll take it because it's going to be awesome. Let's start with where we started the show, ACC, SEC. We've got 6 games, but the 2 premier games are happening on Tobacco Road, where Alabama, 10th ranked Alabama, visits number 20 North Carolina at 7:15 on ESPN. And then number 2 Auburn visits number 9 Duke right after that at 9:15. Duke favored by, again, 2.5. Leif, what do you make of these 2 games where the pride of some Alabama schools are going to the pride of some North Carolina schools?
I'm very, very, very curious about the Duke and Auburn game.
Yes.
I've been thinking about this for about 4 straight days. Like, this is how my brain works. I see the schedule for a week and I start marinating and thinking, oh my gosh, how is this going to be played? So I'll give you my musings that I still am not sure of. But Auburn prides themselves on not doubling. Like they pride themselves on playing great individual defense on the wings. They have long wings such as Chad Baker-Mazara, such as Chaney Johnson, all these guys that influence the game. Well, when has Cooper Flagg turned the ball over? I think he's got 22 turnovers, and 14 of which have been on spins or off of the helping guy digging. So
Yep.
does Auburn start to dig, and who guards Cooper Flagg? Because you're not going to put Janai Broom on him. Do you put Dylan Cardwell and say, hey, you got to get through me and put a big, strong guy against a 17-year-old? That's my hunch. But I think Flagg's going to be too quick, too nimble a couple times, and then it's going to become Chad Baker-Mazara. And I think though Chad Baker-Mazara is one of the best utility guys in the country, I think Cooper Flagg's going to win that matchup. Now, can he score over the intimidating factor of Janai Broom? And conversely, can Janai Broom effectively score against Common Malach's length? Because Broom has been bigger and stronger than everyone else. He's stronger, but he's not bigger than Malach in this case. And Duke's already played against a team in Kansas that likes to go high-low, and they took it away. They took it away time and time again. He went 4 of 11, speaking of Dickinson. I think Broom's better than Dickinson, but he's not necessarily as adept at shooting difficult jump hooks, and all this stuff. And Duke was able to take that away. I think Duke wins this game, and I think the mark is going to be on the number one team in the country, favoring Auburn plus 2.5 or money line. I think Duke wins in Cameron Indoor, but I can't wait for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is Ken Palm's number one offense in Auburn against Ken Palm's number one defense in Duke. And we love it when things like that happen because it's strength on strength and something's got to win out. I'm really curious to see if Janai Broom can use some of his like wily old man YMCA kind of game to just like get into the chest of Malawak, make him spin cycle a little bit. We'll see what happens there. Who does Denver Jones guard when he's in the game with his great defense? I'm really curious to see Tahad Pettiford. How does he hold up as a freshman in this environment? He was not rattled at all at Houston. I know it wasn't on campus at Houston. It was at Toyota Center, but man, some really, really interesting stuff. Very excited for this game, Leif, where we have Auburn number 1 in our poll. This is just, this game is going to be phenomenal. In the other game on Tobacco Road, Leif, it's interesting because Alabama has not been this top 2 team that we thought they would be coming into the season, but neither has North Carolina showed all that much. Either slow starts for their All-American guards, both for Mark Sears, RJ Davis. It appears that Sears is coming out of it more so than RJ Davis is. One thing that's interesting to note is Latrell Reitzel is unfortunately out. That Achilles was ruptured. But the other problem for Alabama is Chris Youngblood is not yet ready to go, it seems like, from what Coach Oates had been saying. Interestingly, in games earlier this season where Reitzel didn't start, Coach Oates went with a starting 5 that included 3 6'11" guys. You had Grant Nelson, Jaron Stevenson, and Cliff Omori. And so North Carolina, though, goes with a 3-guard lineup that includes 6'0" RJ Davis, 6'1" Elliot Cadeau, and 6'3" Seth Trimble. That means probably we're going to see Seth Trimble guarding one of those 6'11" guys and vice versa. Leif, that's going to make for a really interesting matchup there at the 3 spot.
Well, the biggest issue then is RJ Davis going to try to stay in front of LeBaron Philon or Mike Sears? Because I don't like that for Carolina.
No.
And so I think even though it's in Chapel Hill, my brain's pivoting leaning towards Alabama. And I know UNC's got revenge on their mind from the Sweet 16, but that was a totally different team. And I think if they played that as a series, UNC wins that more times than not. This team is still really struggling to find an interior identity. Jalen Washington has a smooth stroke, but he's not strong enough. He's not tough enough on the interior. Well, Cliff Omori actually hasn't been great either for Alabama, but one thing he is he's huge.
And strong.
He's huge. Grant Nelson in this game could play the 5 and be perfectly comfortable. That's the complaint about Nelson. It's like, when he plays the 5 at Alabama last year, they lost those games. They're inept defensively. Doesn't matter in this one, but instead he's going to be the biggest guy. He's going to have a huge mismatch. He's going to be guarded maybe by Withers, but at times he's going to have Drake Powell, a freshman, on him. At times he may even have Trimble on him. And Trimble and Powell are fantastic athletes. Those are not slights at those guys. It's just sheer size.
It's a size thing, yeah.
And Alabama shoots a ton of 3s, so it's not like they're going to be sacrificing, hey, we're so big, we're only going to shoot 2s. They might still shoot more 3s than North Carolina does. So the math to me favors Alabama. It's obviously in the Dean Dome. You've got a team hungry for revenge in North Carolina. 3 fantastic guards. I really am looking forward to it. But I like you said, and you astutely pointed out, North Carolina is going to have matchup problems all day. I'm curious to see how they match up and find a way to not get in foul trouble if Alabama does pound the paint. And then when Alabama guards, do you kind of just run the Carolina team off the line and send them to the rim and say, hey, try to score over Cliff, try to score over Jaron Stevenson? And that's what I'd probably do. So because of that, I think the math actually favors Alabama. They're going to shoot more 3s. and they're going to get more rebounds, thus more possessions, more points. That's my prediction, but I don't know. I mean, Alabama's been pretty underwhelming, honestly. Mark Sears has not played like an All-American thus far. RJ Davis, I don't think, has been great either. So I think whichever All-American plays more like an All-American probably does well. And watch out for LeBaron Philon, particularly if he gets to attack against RJ Davis, because of matchup issues dictate it.
Yes. Hopefully going to be a statement game for one of these two teams. But as you said, both of them have kind of underwhelmed so far this season. 4 other games in ACC, SEC: Virginia at Florida, Pitt at Mississippi State, Texas at NC State, and Vandy at Virginia Tech. Leaf, Big 12, Big East also has 2 ranked-on-ranked matchups. We've got Baylor, number 15, at number 25. UConn, no Alex Caravan in this game. UConn still favored. And the big showdown, Marquette, that right now seems to be the toast of the Big East, thanks to UConn's winless trip to Maui, at number 6, Iowa State, who right now is known for their offense more than their defense this year, which is a funny thing to say. Unfortunately, that game is for some reason on ESPN Plus. That is a massive miss. Cyclones favored by 5.5 at home. Quickly, the other 2 games, and then we'll look, is Kansas, number 1, at Creighton. This game has lost some of its luster just because Creighton's been off to a start. Ashworth has been back from an injury. Kalkbrenner missed Creighton's last game over the weekend. We'll have to see if he's going to be back tonight. I haven't heard or seen yet. Do you know, Leif? GTD as of right now. Definitely going to need him against Hunter Dickinson. What a matchup that would be. And DePaul at Texas Tech. Blue Demons undefeated, Leif, so far this season. I think that first loss is going to happen. I give you those quickly because I want to get back to these ranked-on-ranked matchups. Can Marquette go into Ames and knock off the Cyclones, Leif? Yes or no?
No, I got Hilton Magic going through right here. I think Iowa State wins this one by 10 plus, actually. I mean, I could be wrong, but what is Marquette good at defensively? They speed you up, they pressure the ball. Well, they got Tamin Lipsey, who has not played as well, and he was returning their best guard. It's been Keshawn Gilbert. He's been really good. Curtis Jones comes off the bench and scores. Momcilovic, I think, is a better version of what Joplin does for Marquette. Chase Ross is a really good defender and athlete, but Joshua Jefferson and Deshaun Jackson, not the Philadelphia Eagle punt returner and wide receiver, but big guy, I think is better than Ben Gold and the interior forces for Marquette. I think at home, I think you give them points anyway because it's a really good home environment, but I also think it's the better team. I think we could be talking about this team as a top 3 team in the country had they finished off Auburn.
Yes, that's like a great point.
You look at last Monday, and they were up 18, maybe even 20 at one point.
18 was the biggest. Yeah,
18 was the largest lead. 16 was the halftime deficit for Auburn that they overcame. And I knew it was going to be close down the stretch, but you very easily could have won the game if you're Iowa State and you win Maui, because I think they're the second best team at Maui. I ranked them as such, and now you go play a home game and you're a little motivated against a team that I think is probably a little overrated by the poll because Marquette's one-dimensional. Cam Jones is brilliant. You and I did an All-American exercise, and I was adamant I'd get Cam Jones. That was my steal, my trick up my sleeve. Well, I'll put Tamin Lipsey on him.
That's right.
For a whole game. You put Tamin Lipsey, you put all those swarming guards in Hilton, and they're scoring this year. I got Iowa State by 10.
Because that's the thing. If Lipsey can shut down Cam Jones, you don't even need him to be dynamic offensively because of what Gilbert's doing, because Momcilovic was the leading scorer the other day. And I think you're so right, Leif. That first round Maui game between Auburn and Iowa State was essentially the Maui championship game in round 1. And so that's the only reason we're talking. I think we would still be talking about Auburn similarly to what we are, but we would be talking about Iowa State nationally differently than we are right now. Watch out for this Iowa State team that could very well win the Big 12. And then the other one, Leif, Baylor going to UConn, Alex Caravanless UConn, who's coming off a 3-game losing streak there or in Maui, but had a game in between to kind of right the ship a little bit. But we've also not been overwhelmed by Baylor. They had that buzzer beater winner, leading into Thanksgiving. And so there's a little bit there, but I don't really feel like I have a good vibe for this game, Leif.
I think UConn's going to win because they're at home. That team's going to be motivated as can be. Hurley's been pissing up a storm with all his antics. And you look at what Hurley is all about, and it's discipline offensively, competitiveness. I think they get that all those things get better at home. Like, in the NBA, they say role players play better at home and the stars play great everywhere. I kind of think it's even more true in college because you look at some of the guys, like I think the defense of Solo Ball, who shoots it really well. I think the effort of the entire team, Mahaney's going to be more at home. Some of that type of stuff I think is going to be important. Not having Caravan's really interesting because he's the heady player who can score, but also gets you a lot of rebounds and swings the ball. But I don't think that like kills them because Liam McNeely can do a lot of that stuff. Ball can score, Ross, Stewart, all these guys can score. And I don't think Baylor is very good defensively, and UConn's not inept offensively. It's just defensively they've been not very good.
Right.
But what does Baylor do offensively? They play a non-shooter in VJ Edgecombe. They play a couple other guards that they like the ball in their hands that aren't very big. And then Norchad Amir, monster on the glass. No disrespect to Norchad Amir, but he's not a power forward. He's a 5. So, and they sacrifice spacing altogether defensively and offensively when he and Josh Ojonwuwa play together. And if they play Amir at the 5, UConn should live scoring points in the paint because he's not a rim protector.
And probably long-term, win or lose this game, it's good for UConn to have to learn to play without relying on Alex Caravan. Like that often hurts teams in the short, but is good for long-term stability of other guys stepping up. Leif, there are 5 more Big 12 Big East games to come Thursday through Sunday, but tonight is really the premier highlight night for this battle. Elsewhere, very quickly to wrap, we're not going to get into these, but there are 3 Big 10 conference games tonight. And what I want to mention about it, Leif, is this is like one of the first glimpses of why these conferences wanted to expand coast to coast. The Big 10 is going to have a triple header on a school night, for crying out loud, all on Big 10 Network, all at time zone appropriate tip times. And here's what I mean. Ohio State at Maryland, tipping off at 6:30 local on Big 10 Network, followed by Michigan State at Minnesota, tipping at 8:30 Eastern, but 7:30 local in Minnesota. And then finally is number 12 Oregon at USC, also tipping at 7:30 local, 10:30 Eastern. So you're able to have these triple headers all at time zone appropriate tip times. Man, this is great for the Big 10 and is a great, it really shows why they wanted to do what they've done with expansion.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be fun. I like it, more basketball for me, but I don't necessarily love all these expansions from different programs and the realignment, but that is the one silver lining is you can watch a lot of basketball on every given night. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see. I think Oregon should truck USC on the road there. They're the Flying V favored by 5.5 points, Michigan State by 4.5 at Minnesota. And we've got that Ohio State Maryland game. That one is intriguing to me, probably the most intriguing of these 3 games for me, Leif. Going to be a great night. I'm drinking my coffee already to get ready for it. Cannot wait to see what happens. Folks, Andy will be with you on tomorrow's show to unpack it all. And then Andy and I will get you ready for the weekend slate coming up on Friday. Thanks so much for joining Leif and I here live on a Wednesday morning in the lunchtime hour. So good to be together. If you've not subscribed to the show on YouTube and audio, make sure you do so that you don't miss a second here of Locked On College Basketball. If you've not joined our Locked On College Basketball Discord, man, that's a place where we're chatting college basketball all day long, not just here when the show's going on. We'd love to have you there. It's free to join, and the link is in the show notes. Apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats. I guess we say congrats to the Villanova Wildcats. Sorry about you to the Northwestern Wildcats. And until tomorrow, peace.